The president's senior aide tests positive for the coronavirus, and hours later, so do President Trump and First Lady Melania. More on the measures being put into place as the 74-year-old leader quarantines at the White House. Could Hope Hicks have been a super spreader? How many people may have been infected in the 48 hours she was actively carrying the virus? Plus, the stock market takes a tumble. What happened moments after the president announced he tested positive? Your Friday edition of Daybreak continues now.
Daybreak starts right now with Tracy Kennick, Vanessa Broussard, and meteorologist Jeff Gerber.
We start this morning with that breaking news out of Washington. President Trump and First Lady Melania both testing positive for the coronavirus. The president confirming the news in a tweet overnight. There's still no word yet on whether either are showing any symptoms, but we do know, according to reports, that the president's top aide, Hope Hicks, is now showing symptoms. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this Friday morning. I'm Tracy Kennick. We'll have more on this breaking news from the White House in just a moment. But first, let's go to Jeff for a look at our Friday night forecast. Friday night football tonight, Jeff. Going to be nice.
Yeah, it looks like as we get into the evening hours, we'll see temperatures just making it back into the middle to lower 70s to start off around 6 o'clock, and then expect most of the evening to be into the upper 60s. So it looks like a great night for some football. During this afternoon, we'll see temperatures up close to 80, 79, 80 degrees for highs today. Plenty of sunshine throughout the day with northeasterly winds between about 5 and 10 miles per hour. Weekend also looking very nice for Saturday and Sunday. We have dry weather really through the next 7 days. We'll show you that 7-day forecast coming up in just a matter of minutes.
Now to more from the White House. After the president announced that he and the First Lady have contracted the coronavirus, the president confirming the news in a tweet late last night, saying, "Tonight, the First Lady and I have tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together." The First Lady tweeted a short time later saying, "As too many Americans have done this year, the president and I are quarantining at home after testing positive for COVID-19. We are feeling good, and I have postponed all upcoming engagements. Please make sure you are staying safe, and we will get through this together." Now, the news comes just hours after we learned that one of the president's top aides, Hope Hicks, tested positive for the virus. She, of course, spent time in close proximity with the president and First Lady this week. With more now, here's Tracy Potts.
I just want to say that the end of the pandemic is in sight.
President Trump's final public appearance before announcing to the world via Twitter that he and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for COVID-19, adding, "We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together."
If the president can get it, anyone can get it, and that's what's so disturbing.
The White House physician confirming that President and Mrs. Trump are feeling well and will quarantine at the White House. A senior administration official says he'll work from the White House residence. The news came shortly after we learned that Hope Hicks, one of the president's top aides, tested positive.
She has spent with the president throughout her time at the White House, not to mention in the past few days. So that will give you some sense of why the president is taking this so seriously.
Hicks was with the president at the debate in Cleveland Tuesday and in Minnesota Wednesday. That's when she began having symptoms, which means she could have been contagious earlier.
We spend a lot of time with Hope and others, so we'll see what happens.
Several White House officials, campaign staffers, and Trump family members have been in contact with Hicks in recent days. She was seen traveling on Air Force One without a mask.
This is a high-risk exposure in an enclosed environment. Everybody on that flight, 14 days quarantine, regardless of what your test shows.
Safety protocols are in place for White House staff. There's also concern about Democratic nominee Joe Biden, who stood 6 feet away from the president for an hour and a half at Tuesday's debate. The president of the United States now infected with coronavirus and unable to campaign in person for the next 2 weeks, with the election now just over a month away. The president was supposed to travel to Orlando for a rally today. That's canceled. And of course, being in quarantine raises questions about whether the next 2 presidential debates will happen, and if so, how? Tracy Potts, NBC News.
After learning about the president's positive test, Vice President Mike Pence tweeted out he's sending his love and prayers to the president and First Lady. He says he joins millions of Americans across the country in wishing the first couple a quick recovery. We do not yet know if the vice president or the second lady have been tested since learning the news. Governor Greg Abbott tweeted out his support for the president this morning, saying he's lifting him up with prayers for the president and the First Lady, saying may God's healing powers touch them and strengthen them and raise them up. All eyes also on the stock market this morning, as immediately after the president made the announcement that he had coronavirus, the Dow Jones Industrial Futures dropped over 500 points, but did recover slightly. Analysts, though, are worried that the negative trend will continue when the stock market opens later today. On top of the stock market, officials are also worried about the potential that Hope Hicks could be a super spreader. This is a list of 20 people who may have been in contact with Hicks in the 48 hours when she may have been active with COVID-19. The list includes Rudy Giuliani, Ivanka Trump, her husband Jared Kushner, and others. This, of course, is a developing story that we will continue to track for you throughout the day here on air and online. And with Texas election rules in the spotlight this morning, we are taking a closer look at how state leaders can change those rules. Janelle Bluto connects the dots for us.
Not too long ago, it was much harder for Texas to make changes to its election rules thanks to a checkered history on minority voting rights. Let's connect the dots. Before 2013, Texas was one of several states, mostly southern, that couldn't make changes to its election rules without getting approval from the federal government. That was thanks to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. States with a documented history of disenfranchising minority voters were singled out and forced to get clearance before making changes to existing rules. The Voting Rights Act was considered by many to be pretty effective legislation, increasing the number of minority voters. It was reauthorized many times, most recently in 2006 when it passed with strong bipartisan support and was signed by George W. Bush. But in 2013, the Supreme Court struck down part of the law that covered how the states with a checkered past were picked, arguing the formula was out of date. That meant certain states did not need approval from the feds to change their voting rules. Within 24 hours of the ruling, Texas announced it would implement a strict photo ID voting law. Connecting the dots, I'm Janelle Bluto.
And there are now just 3 days left for you to get registered to vote. The deadline, October 5th, fast approaching. To get a look at our election guide before you vote, text us the word VOTE to 409-838-1212. Topping your morning rush, firefighters in Northern California continue to battle the so-called glass fire that has now consumed more than 58,000 acres in Napa and Sonoma counties. Hundreds are under new evacuation orders this morning as the fire is just 5% contained. On Capitol Hill, the House has passed the Democrats' $2.2 trillion coronavirus relief plan, known as the HEROES Act. It passed 214 to 207. No Republicans voted for the bill, and 18 Democrats voted against it. It will now go to the Senate, where it is not expected to pass. Happening today, the grand jury recording in the Breonna Taylor case is set to be made public after the motion from Attorney General Daniel Cameron to delay its release. The judge has given the AG until 11 a.m. to release the records. Shifting gears to consumer news, the last U.S. employment report before the election will be released today. The economy expected to have added 800,000 jobs in September compared to 1.37 million in August. The pace of jobs growth is expected to continue to trend downward through the end of the year. In sports news, the Lakers and Heat gearing up for Game 2 of the NBA Finals tonight. Miami looking to even up the series after Los Angeles dominated Game 1. Tip-off set for 8 o'clock on KVMT.
Cool temperatures across the Lone Star State for this morning. We'll see some more cool weather coming up this weekend. We'll have your forecast in just a few minutes.